spacecraft designer, that's exactly what you want to hear. Is the way that I trained
After
you
19 hours, our
exactly
astronauts are ready to dock into International Space Station.
The second manual
It's been an exciting historical day. It started everything 19 hours ago. Yesterday, May 30, 2020, from the Kennedy Space Center in Florida, when for the first time after almost 10 years, for a long time, two astronauts left. Were launched from American soil and were sent to the space station. And it was a fantastic ceremony. We had President Trump and Elon Musk talking about the accomplishment of this mission. It's the first commercial crew sent through not only NASA, but the company SpaceX, which is a private company. And now, in the next 20 minutes, the astronauts will arrive and docking to the International Space Station. It's been very, very exciting. They were meant to leave Earth a few days ago, but they had a problem with the weather, and so they had to reschedule on May 30, and today, May 31st, 2020, which is around 7 a.m. Pacific time. They're already working on a maneuver. They will first do a test maneuver manually, and when everything is working, they will set like autopilot, and they will dock the International Space Station. Let's see if we have the video. Here it is, and
got to see some pretty cool views from behind. Actually, there's a view right there. You can see the station on their displays. Visors up, Doug in the left seat, Bob in the right seat.
Yeah, so at this moment, Dragon is going to be resuming the approach. As we heard them informing the crew, they're going to have that one final hold when they're just 20 meters away. That's going to be at waypoint 2. We're expecting it to be a brief hold while the teams all tag up and do a final go to move in for docking. Getting a great look at the space station itself. The docking port is right in the center of our screen. You can see another spacecraft currently docked to the space station, the Japanese HTV spacecraft currently docked to the Earth-facing port. One of those common berthing mechanisms also on Node 2. So Dragon will be the second vehicle to be docked to the Harmony module once it makes its final approach. And it's moving in right now. Again, just to give you an idea of how quickly they're moving, they're going at about 0.3 of a meter per second right now. And so if you're having any trouble with that docking simulator online, remember to just slow things down a little bit, and your chances will go up exponentially. We just passed 140 meters away. We'll get our live video comm back with the space station momentarily. As soon as we do, we'll bring you back up there. But for now, Bob and Doug continuing to fly in. They're just 135 meters away.
Station on the big loop in step 2, review of steps 3 and 4 is complete. Crew is on the International Space Station is ready for docking.
Station Houston on the big loop, we copied the review of 3 and 4 complete. International Space Station ready, thank you.
Expedition 63 Commander Chris Cassidy giving the report, station is ready for docking.
Yeah, and you can see the trajectory of the spacecraft. There are small corrections that are happening. So as we get closer and closer to station, we're trying to stay within those 2 corridors, which are shown coming out of the docking port that we're going towards. That little dot, I think, was the 20-meter hold point. So that's where we expect there to be the spacecraft holding right in front of the International Docking Adapter. There'll be a go, no-go poll. The ground teams have worked hard over the past probably years to come up with a set of what we call flight rules. So those are technical constraints, items that we look for, that if any of those criteria were violated, then we have a rule that we've predetermined, gives us guidance to say whether we could approach or not. So far, our vehicle has been very healthy, but technical ground teams will all do their due diligence to make sure that it's still safe to approach.
Right, and at this moment, that approach is continuing, still moving in at about 0.3 of a meter per second. Dragon's coming up on just 100 meters away from the space station.
So the very top there is the nose cone on the spacecraft, where we've got a cool view. Left side of your screen is the International Space Station. Right side of your screen is Dragon.
We're inside 100 meters, continuing to close. Again, we're going to have a short hold at 20 meters. Teams will just do a final check, and then they'll give Dragon the go. We're expecting it to be pretty brief. We should get to that hold point in just about 4 minutes, moving at our current pace.
I think you can see a meatball and American flag on that on the spacecraft. The NASA logo, of course, referred to as the meatball. I think there was some spirited discussion about the meatball versus the worm during ascent. And those are, you can see those logos. That structure on the fairing structure is actually what the Super Dracos are housed in. Of course, all of those are deactivated now, only used for launch escape during the ascent portion. Nose cone right at the top of the vehicle. And you can see sort of the sealing surface, those four circular slots right underneath the nose cone within that red ring are the Ford bulkhead Dracos. That's what we were using while we were conducting all those burns, the 5 burns to get to this point. Right now, we don't have a reason to use those. We'll only be making small attitude corrections with the service section Dracos. And you can see the service section actually pretty clearly here too. There's a black portion and a white portion sort of separated by a fin. The black portion is solar panels, solar cells that'll charge Dragon's batteries. And the bottom side are the white portion is actually a thermal radiator that's used to keep the spacecraft nice and cool. Of course, the avionics and the cabin, making sure that Bob and Doug are comfortable inside.
It looks like we're getting a shadow cast. We are just 60 meters away, continuing to close in, just about 40 meters to go until we're at that hold point. Should get there in just over 2 minutes. Meanwhile, teams in Hawthorne and in Houston doing their internal go, no go for docking. They're going to get all the teams polled. Once everyone's go, we'll be able to give Dragon the final go ahead for the vehicle to autonomously fly in and dock with the International Space Station. Should be coming up on waypoint 2 arrival in just about 1 minute, 45 seconds. At this point, it'll be 20 meters away from that docking port. The International Docking Adapter number 2 attached to pressurized mating adapter number 2 at the very forward end of the Harmony module.
Right there on the right around the center, you can see the forward hatch. It's got a window in it. You can see a couple of handles, and there's some features that look sort of bronze-ish. Those are the pedals that we were talking about earlier as part of the soft capture system. So pretty wild too to see. We're so close that we're getting shadows from the station on Dragon. Wow.
And we're getting these views of Dragon's approach from 2 cameras that are right next to that docking adapter. And the movement's a little jarring at times. These cameras are being commanded by a person at the Cronus console in Mission Control Houston, and they send some very basic function commands to the camera, which it then executes automatically. And so they're continuing to follow Dragon in. So we do thank them for their diligence to give us these views of this historic moment as we are just less than 30 meters away from docking.
Right above the NASA meatball logo, you can see 3 of the service section Draco thrusters.
That's right, 12 in all. So the 4 of those clusters spread around the vehicle, used for a lot of the attitude control and any small translational maneuvers like we just watched Bob and Doug execute with their second manual flight test.
Yeah, and actually oriented in a way too, where if you were to lose some of those thrusters, you still have redundancy and control in those axes. That's part of the reason why they're sort of at the angles that they are.
All right, so we should be getting to waypoint 2 right now. So it looks like we do have that hold.
Dragon SpaceX on Big Loop. The ground is go for approach 2. We will be enabling the resume shortly. As a reminder, ensure your visors are closed prior to Dragon's departure from the waypoint. And once Dragon is inside the crew hands-off point, retreat and breakout are not permitted. And for your awareness, we have sunset in a little less than 8.5 minutes.
Dragon copies all on the Big Loop. Go for docking.
So Doug on the spacecraft confirming their go for docking. They're going to put down their visors. Got some instructions there about the crew hands-off point that we had talked about earlier. That's a point where we don't want the crew issuing any commands to the vehicle.
Wow.
It's about just about 2 meters away from the docking adapter. I believe the number is about 1.7 meters.
Station Houston on the Big Loop. Houston and station are now go for docking. Chris, you can monitor for steps 3 and 4.
It's a go for docking.
1.104 crew Dragon approach and retreat monitoring.
Yeah.
Copy steps 3 and 4.
Next Dragon on the Big Loop. Our visors are down.
Copy, visors down.
With the crew confirming their visors down, we should see the final approach resume.
Station Dragon on the Big Loop. We are inbound from approach 2.
Copy, inbound.
Station copy.
And we're going to be racing that sunset. The approach has resumed. Dragon closing in. We're inside 20 meters. And yeah, that crew hands-off point should come up in about 3 minutes or so, right before we get that final docking. It comes about 20 seconds prior, or just about 2 meters away from the station still. And that's just the crew not issuing any abort commands. At that point, it would be too late. And so any aborts would be executed automatically by Dragon itself. So we're closing in at less than 1/10 of a meter per second at this point.
You can see the service section Draco is just doing all these very small, minor attitude corrections. Really, the autonomous docking system at work, making sure that the vestibule and the soft capture system is lined up with IDA2. It's the International Docking Adapter.
"2,000 years later."
You can see much more clearly there the hinge mechanism for the nose cone. Those 4 black circles are the forward bulkhead Dracos, not to be used at this time. And then, of course, the pedals of the soft capture system. Wow.
Dragon on the Big Loop. We're inside 10 meters. We cannot make out the docking target, but we do see the outline.
We copy and concur 10 meters.
Right, we're less than 10 meters away. Again, we're closing at that rate of less than 1/10 of a meter per second. We should be just about 1 minute, 45 seconds away from docking.
There is a center line camera right in that middle, so you can see where the forward hatch is, and right in the middle of that there's a window and there's a centerline camera that is aligned with the center of the vehicle and the center of the docking mechanism. So that is what the autonomous docking system is using to line up with sort of a cross-hatch, cross-target on the docking port. Again, the forward docking port on PMA2, or the pressurized mating adapter.
And we are just 5 meters away. Again, we're racing that sunset. This Dragon continues to close, 4 meters to go.
Those shadows of the space station on the vehicle. Yeah, you can actually see the centerline camera pretty clearly there, sort of with the contrast of the sun right now.
3 meters to go. Two meters. We are inside the hands-off point, the chop, the crew hands-off point. 1 meter to go. Soft capture complete.
Dragon is ready. Soft capture confirmed. Stand by for retraction and docking.
Standing by.
And we just heard it, soft capture. We have docking, that coming at 7:16 a.m. Pacific time, with the station and Dragon flying 262 statute miles right over the border between northern China and Mongolia.
They were early.
Motion there of Dragon. That was that relative motion that the soft capture.
Wow.
2,000 years later.
That's basically how long we had to wait to dock in space properly without any problems or disaster movies. Gravity traumatized me. Sandra Bullock and George Clooney. Poor guy died after 5 minutes in the film.
National Space Station, we're flying 262 statute miles right over the border between northern China and Mongolia. So that soft capture ring now going to retract. It's one more step on the way to docking complete.
Docking complete.
Get on board.
Yeah, and so the next step here is once the soft capture ring is retracted, there are 12 latches that we refer to as hard capture latches. Those are what will really create that pressure tight seal between the Dragon spacecraft and the International Space Station. So once soft capture is complete, and I believe we'll get that call from our core here, Anna, then we'll get confirmation of hard capture, and the crew, of course, aboard have this information on their displays, so they'll also see indication of hard capture complete. And once those two steps are done, then that's docking complete.
That's right, and we're expecting to hear some words from everybody. A pretty monumental moment. I mean, for Doug Hurley, he's returning to where he last docked almost 9 years ago on the very last space shuttle mission, now commanding the very first commercial spacecraft to deliver astronauts to the International Space Station.
That's got to be cool for them. They've mentioned quite a few times that they're best friends, our favorite dads in space, as we've been calling them. This has got to be really cool for them.
Nobody knows exactly who's on the International Space Station at the moment. Who will they meet? Are they Russians, Chinese, Italians, German? Who knows?
It looks like we have another quick handover. We'll get that video back shortly. We're about...
Not only us, Sara, that have issues with live transmission.
Once that retraction is completed, we'll keep an eye out for the 12 ready to hook indicators. Once those are ready, those 12 hooks will begin to engage, and that'll securely attach Dragon to the International Space Station.
Yeah, so right now the vehicle confirming that the soft capture system is deployed correctly and is fully retracted. And then once the soft capture system is fully retracted, that'll set up the vehicle to put in the hard capture pins. There's 12 of those around the docking ring, and that's what creates that airtight seal between the Dragon spacecraft and the International Space Station. The volume between, which we refer to as the vestibule, is currently not pressurized. Of course, it was just exposed to the vacuum of space until literally minutes ago, about 4 minutes ago. So just waiting for the vehicle to get that.
Dragon SpaceX, ring retraction complete. Docking sequence is holding for MCS reconfiguration.
MCS reconfiguration.
Right, so we see those ready to hook indicators are lighting up green. So we should be just about to step into those 12 hooks beginning to engage to get that secure mate between Dragon and the International Docking Adapter on the space station.
He didn't explain what MCS is.
What it is?
Manual control system.
We're actually at about 18 hours, 58 minutes, and 42 seconds. So we promised about a 19-hour ride up to station, and we made it just a few minutes before that. They were able to dock a few minutes ahead of schedule. We were tracking them to still take about another 10 minutes, but able to step through all of their burns about 16 minutes ahead of schedule and get us to where we are now. If you missed it just a few moments ago, that initial docking coming at 7:16 a.m. Pacific, 10:16 a.m. over on the east coast of the United States, and they were 262 statute miles flying together over the northern border of China and Mongolia. So
I can just imagine that they did that on purpose. Of course, they want to dock above China, right in the middle of an economic war, just in case China is wondering what the heck is going on with the United States. Probably they're thinking, aren't they already all dead from the COVID-19? How could they dock right above us right now?
And station at Houston on the Big Loop. MCS is configured. We're proceeding with hook driving.
All right, and they did a quick, so the motion control system onboard station now back under those control moment gyros, so handed over from the Russian thrusters, and Dragon now given the go to drive those hooks. We have to do that changeover of attitude control before we drive those hooks, as the Russian thrusters a little bit more dynamic in their control of attitude, and if you had a thruster firing while you were starting to drive those hooks, that could miss a line. So going over to the smoother control moment gyros on the U.S. side, now controlling the attitude on board the station, and those hooks, those 12 hooks on Dragon, about to start driving.
It's always the Russians that have the potential to fuck everything up. Sorry, I meant duck everything up.
Off the east coast of China, just underneath Japan. Attached to each other, we recently passed over to the orbital night, so we're on the currently the dark side of the world. And actually, we're lucky enough to see soft capture happen just as we were crossing over the Terminator line.
And if you're wondering what you're looking at, this is one of the cameras on the very outboard part of the Japanese experiment module, looking back in towards the very front part of Node 2, where Dragon is currently docked. We are in an orbital nighttime. That's why everything is so dark. But you're looking at Dragon. It is horizontal to the ground. So the hatch part is right where that green light pretty much is. You can see the nose cone still illuminated above it, and it is currently attached to an international docking adapter on the International Space Station.
And inside that capsule are Bob Behnken and Doug Hurley, first astronauts to fly on a private developed vehicle up to the International Space Station. Both test pilots got to do some fun tests today. Have a few more steps before they can actually get aboard and ingress to the International Space Station. And that's what we heard over the big loop, that transition, which allows us to then proceed with hard capture.
One day, we will be watching the same sequence happen above planet Gliese, which is an exoplanet about 16 to 20 light years away. 16 to 20 light years away from Earth. We will be doing exactly the same, but different.
We're keeping all of that valuable life support in the vehicle. Now the combined ISS Dragon vehicle.
Here they are.
Here they are. We're inside.
Meanwhile, inside the capsule, Bob and Doug also standing by for this hard capture to complete. And once we have that docking complete call, they'll be able to start stepping through a number of procedures to get them ready to move into the International Space Station. They'll get the go-ahead to doff or get out of their suits, and then they'll have some activities on the Dragon side to prepare for the hatch opening. Chris Cassidy will mainly be working on the station side to pressurize the vestibule. So as Shiv has talked about, the space between the Dragon capsule and the space station was exposed to vacuum. And even after this tight seal has occurred, we'll still be at vacuum inside. So we'll actually open up a valve to supply air from the station side into that space between the Dragon and station hatchways. And they'll get it up to the same ambient pressure that we'll have inside of Dragon and on the station itself. They'll wait for it to thermally balance out, make sure we don't have any temperature swings as we're bringing it up from vacuum. So probably from a very cold temperature up to about 72 degrees that they have in their cabin temperature on board the station. And then we'll get the hatches open.
Screen.
Dragon SpaceX, hard capture complete. Stand by for docking completion.
Now that hard capture is complete, so that's confirmation of those 12 latches to create that airtight seal. Now that's complete, the umbilicals from the station side will interface with the Dragon vehicle umbilicals, and that'll provide power and communications through space station directly to Dragon. Pretty much the whole way up, Dragon's been using a combination of batteries and its solar cells pointed at the sun to make sure that it has enough electrical power for the journey up.
What's amazing about all this is that the air inside the International Space Station, it's pretty old. That thing's been up there for 20 years. Imagine the amount of bacteria.
Yeah, we're just standing by now for that umbilical to get mated, and that's going to, again, as Shiv was just saying, start the power and data transfer between Dragon and the space station. They've been...
if there are people up there for a long time, prior to 5 months ago, they probably don't have coronavirus, and we're bringing it to them. We might kill them.
No.
And the International Space Station itself, and then also being able to draw power from the station systems using those great big solar arrays that are used to generate all of the electricity for systems on board the station.
You see, they have solar panels giving them power.
21 years ago.
Yeah. I'm struggling to try and get solar panels in my house. See, sunset has happened. We are 29 minutes since docking started.
And the soft capture system has been stowed. We see the umbilical starting to deploy. about 40% of the way so far, going pretty quickly. Should just take a couple more seconds until we're all the way connected. And then we should be getting that docking complete call out from the core here in Mission Control, SpaceX and Hawthorne. Standing by.
Stand by.
Actually, it's amazing how they timed everything so tightly so that they dock with just only 8 minutes to sunset above China. That must have been calculated on purpose to be right there on top of China.
Here they are.
Just a small part of this 9-year endeavor since the last time the United States spaceship has docked with the International Space Station. We have to congratulate the men and women of SpaceX at Hawthorne, McGregor, and at Kennedy Space Center. Their incredible efforts over the last several years to make this possible cannot go overstated. I'd also like to thank Kathy Leaders and her team of the Commercial Crew Program of NASA. An outstanding job by everyone. Last, I'd like to thank the men and women of the National Aeronautics and Space Agency. This is an incredible time to be at NASA. 3 new vehicles to be flown, continuing mission in low Earth orbit, and then to the moon and Mars. We thank you again and congratulate you.
2,000 years later.
Yes, it did take a long time to achieve this. There's still one long haul journey to reach Mars.
And that's the Kennedy Space Center?
For the first time since the retirement of the space shuttle,
that's the International Space Station
a
Control
historic
Center
ride
on
to the
right.
ISS and have opened up a new chapter in human space exploration. On behalf of the flight control teams here in Houston and in Hawthorne, California, and to our SpaceX colleagues, bravo on a magnificent moment in spaceflight history and on the start of a new journey that has changed the face of space travel in this new era of space transportation. Bob and Doug, good luck, and we look forward to working with you on board.
That's the International Space Station Control
Dragon
Center.
SpaceX. Bob and Doug, we here at SpaceX are honored to have been part of ushering in this new era of human spaceflight. On behalf of the SpaceX and NASA partnership, congratulations on a phenomenal accomplishment and welcome to the International Space Station.
Well, thank you, Anna. We appreciate all the good words and everyone thanking us, but it truly was a magnificent effort by the entire team, the SpaceX team, the NASA team, and a team across America who was able to pull this off and bring human spaceflight again to our nation. Thanks for everything. Happy to be aboard.
They're exactly in the same position you are, Sara. They had an entire team to have you just in front of the camera. And everybody thanks them.
With that, ground will be enabling hardline power and comm connection shortly. You are go to dock your suits per procedure 4.012. We will be configuring your video to go external shortly, and we have one request for Bob's suit doffing when you're ready to copy.
I actually like her.
She's, go ahead for Bob.
They're wearing masks.
During your approach suit leak check, we noticed Bob's suit pass with a lower PSID than his previous vehicle and O&C checks. We still had plenty of margin to support you in a depress, but in order to rule out potential hardware issues, when Bob is doffing, after he opens his structural zipper, check all 3 bladder zipper heads to see if any are partially closed. It is possible that if the head is backed off slightly, that the white tooth is partially visible or a small gap can be seen between the end of the zipper head and the gasket end. Please report observations.
He's losing pressure in his suit around the bladder zippers. That means he went peeing, and now he's jeopardizing the entire mission because his suit lost pressure.
Great, thank you so much.
Wow. So now Dragon has completed its docking sequence. There's a number of checks. That was an absolutely historic moment. And in spite of that, the ground team's getting right back to business, talking about the suit performance.
Just let us know when the interior cameras are secured.
On Dragon to ground,
turn the cameras off first before we can get them out of their suits.
Absolutely. So spacecraft is now docked. They've got several tasks that they're going to need to be able to do. While we're waiting for those tasks to happen, we're actually going to take a short break. But if in case you just missed it, the Dragon spacecraft is now docked to the International Space Station, docked at 7:16 a.m. local time.
Yep.
Bob and Doug are at the space station.
Yeah, they're there. It was just under a 19-hour journey from their launch to their docking, so pretty much right on what we were expecting. They got there a little bit early today, which was nice, as they were able to get through all those burns. But they're docked. It's going to be a little while. They have to do that vestibule pressurization, and then they'll have to do some leak checks.
Dragon on Dragon to ground for Bob. I've got both structural zippers on my gloves lowered, and I do see white teeth visible on both sides. It looks like a full white tooth. I'll give you an update once I get to the leg zipper.
Copy. White teeth on both sides, and we'll await your next status.
So the crew right now just going through some checks of their gloves. They're about to get out of their suits. That'll be the first step for the crew on board Dragon. For the crew on board station, Chris Cassidy is going to start getting that vestibule pressurized, and then they're going to do leak checks. So they're going to be actually taking atmosphere from station, putting it into that vestibule. And then once we get all the leak checks done, things are thermally stabilized, it'll be time for hatch opening. We'll be able to see Bob and Doug get into the space station for the first time from on board the Dragon spacecraft. And again, for Doug Hurley, this is the exact port he was at almost 9 years ago when he was on the very last space shuttle mission. And now he's commanding the first commercial vehicle to dock with the International Space Station. I think that's going to do it for us in Hawthorne. We're going to give you into the very capable hands of Gary Jordan to take you through the rest of the hatch opening. We're going to be watching from here and following along. We can't wait to see these crew members on board the International Space Station. Thank you for everybody who tuned in. We hope you enjoyed the launch. We hope you enjoyed the ride uphill. We really hope you were with us every single moment from suit up until now. So you've been up for over 24 hours. But it's been an incredible experience for us to see these guys get on board the International Space Station, to watch Dragon go through the paces, to be lofted into orbit on Falcon 9, something we've been waiting for years, seeing it come to fruition. I'm still grappling with.
Dragon, SpaceX on Dragon
really
to ground.
Incredible.
Video is
and
no
Shiv,
interior.
It was an honor doing this with you today.
Yeah, absolutely, Dan.
Dragon copy. Thanks, Anna.
Can't step on the crew. That's
Can't step
the
on the
rule.
Yeah.
There were some really great words there from all the flight control teams about how this was a joint partnership between NASA and SpaceX. I think everyone is over the moon here at SpaceX for this. Bob and Doug have got to be excited, and now back to business to get the vestibule ready to go, and then get them on board the station. So again, thank you for following us. Please continue to watch as Gary takes over for the hatch opening portion, and keep following our social media for more updates on what's happening with hatch open.
Over to you, Gary.
Thank you, Shiva. Thank you, Dan. What an incredible flight for Bob and Doug, lifting off just yesterday and now in space, attached to the International Space Station. Some kind words all over after docking at 9:16 a.m. Central, and a hard mate just 11 minutes later. We're still not done here. We're going to take you through the pressurization sequence and eventually hatch opening of the International Space Station.
SpaceX Dragon on Dragon to ground. Cabin mic check,
And I hear you loud and clear on Dragon to ground. How many?
Loud and clear.
Excellent.
Good comm checks. We still have a lot of work to do here. We're going to pressurize the vestibule and eventually get...
And SpaceX Dragon with an update from Bob. It looks like white tooth on the leg zipper as well. We'll take a close look if we can see anything else that might have resulted in that lower leak check pressure.
Copy. Really appreciate the report. Thank you.
Teams behind me will be configuring the Dragon and the International Space Station to welcome Bob and Doug aboard. First, of course, the International Space Station attitude control moment gyros, really holding the Dragon in place through the hard capture sequence. We'll start enabling those thrusters and pressurizing the vestibule. It'll take about an hour until we're able to get the hatch open. The teams here in Mission Control Houston, Orbit 2, led by Flight Director Zeb Scoville, will be taking us through that process. Aboard the International Space Station, Commander Chris Cassidy standing by in Node 2. Right in front of that is the pressurized mating adapter. He recently opened up the hatch to introduce some of the station air and mix it, get a nice mix in there, avoiding some CO2 pockets. That hatch you see just beyond Chris Cassidy there is normally closed. He was able to open it a little bit earlier today, mix some of that cabin air and get rid of those CO2 pockets, make sure it's all clean and ready for Bob and Doug. He closed it shortly after just to make sure no FOD or foreign objects, anything were to float in there that would inhibit any hatch opening process today. One of the next milestones for Chris Cassidy will be to open up that hatch. He's got some cameras you see placed within that node. We'll get some good views of the hatch opening and welcoming Bob and Doug here in just about an hour.
This is a fantastic view.
A big moment in history today, May 31st, 2020. Just on the other side of that hatch, Bob Behnken and Doug Hurley have successfully arrived at the International Space Station. Still a couple of milestones to get through. Before we can open up that hatch, it's going to take some time. First, pressurizing the vestibule in between the station and Dragon. We'll bring that up to pressure. It's going to take some time for that pressure to stabilize. Of course, the temperature within that vestibule causes a little bit of swing, so we'll just wait for that to pressurize or to stabilize before opening up that hatch. Here at Mission Control Houston, Flight Director Zeb Scoville welcoming the director of the NASA Johnson Space Center, Mark Geyer. We'll have a few other VIPs here in the room to welcome Bob and Doug once they get through that hatch.
Wow. And that, they docked. How was that? Any comment?
Well, that was historical.
Now again, this repressurization and hatch opening process is going to take some time. You see now we're going to have some intermittent losses with the communication from the International Space Station.
Oh, wow. So
you're seeing now the International Space Station Flight Control Room led by Flight Director Zeb Scoville. Just a handover of some of those audio and visual communications. We'll be regaining those shortly. Might lose them intermittently throughout the repressurization process, but the teams here will be monitoring all of the procedures again, pressurizing that vestibule and eventually getting to that hatch opening.
How amazing. They're knocking on the door. Excuse me, can I get in?
It's interesting to see that SpaceX
from right to left
masks.
there, seated, you see Flight Director Zeb Scoville. It was he who was leading the teams for both the launch of Bob and Doug over at the Cape. He was leading the teams here in Mission Control Houston. You just saw the Johnson Space Center Director Mark Geyer walk off to the side. Seated next to Zeb Scoville, Joshua Kutrick. He is one of the members of the most recent class of astronauts, the class of 2017. Canadian Space Agency astronaut, went through candidate training and officially became an astronaut just recently.
Amazing. This is very cool. So these are we're seeing inside the International Space Station.
Why wasn't he ready already? Why didn't he do all these things before? Was he waiting for them to just get there to do all this stuff? I don't get it. I mean, there must have been another way of project
Again,
management.
a few milestones to get through to that hatch opening. First, the International Space Station attitude control has been successfully switched from control moment gyro only control, enabling some of the thrusters on the International Space Station. We also just received word that Dragon is successfully receiving power.
Yay!
Has been established.
And there you have it. Dragon is successfully receiving power from the International Space Station.
Yeah.
And Dragon copies on Dragon to ground that power has been established. Just let us know when we should make a hardline comm check.
We will, Co. Thank you.
So their cell phones are not going to run out of battery soon. That's good. It's very interesting to see how the top level management and preparation looks like in real life. If you ever wonder why your life is a mess, or mine, and you see how you organize somebody else's life, then you understand why. That's what it takes so that nothing goes wrong. When you see things going wrong, then it's a symptom of something going wrong in all the preparation.
Preparation is key. That's not an everyday view.
His name is Chris.
So this is the procedure they need to do every time they receive new astronauts.
I'd imagine there are similar procedures and there are differences, but ultimately it is.
For those of you just joining us, you are getting a live look at NASA astronaut Chris Cassidy, commander of the International Space Station, doing some of the prep work to open up the hatch and get ready to welcome Bob Behnken and Doug Hurley aboard the International Space Station. They launched successfully yesterday at 2:22 p.m. Central Time, 3:22 p.m. Eastern, and docked successfully with a contact and capture just a little bit ago at 9:16 a.m. Central Time, 10:16 Eastern.
Well, it was amazing to discover, Sara, thank you for telling me, that was it Doug or Bob's son called Theo? Do you remember?
We know someone called Theo too.
So one of the characters in our film is called Theo.
Now, some of the milestones to get that hatch open have already taken place. First, attitude control. For some of the docking sequence, for the initial contact and capture, attitude control was on Russian thrusters. That was moved to control moment gyros for hard mate, making sure that everything lined up and we got those ready to hook indicators green before driving those hooks. The attitude control has since been switched to enable some thrusters on the International Space Station.
Attitude control?
We did get confirmation of good power being delivered from ISS to the Dragon. Next will be to test some hard line communication between Dragon and the International Space Station.
Yes, it is attitude control.
In case someone arrives with an attitude inside.
No, Sara. It's the control mechanism that drives the hooks into the International Space Station.
Where are the others? Why they're not helping him? Doing everything by himself.
I think he's alone in the International Space Station.
No, he's the commander.
So, where are the others? Are there others?
Let's see.
How many are on the International Space Station?
Let's find out.
It's quite incredible because to construct an International Space Station in the first place in space took years to conduct and complete. From design to project management to actual functioning. Most people on Earth are not aware of how much work it takes.
Dragon end station. It's Houston calling on the big loop. We're prepared and getting ready to transition the comm system to hardline, at which time we're going to do a couple comm checks. We just want to make sure everybody's on board with that and aware. So Dragon first, maybe let me know if you hear this and if you're go with that plan.
Yeah, Houston Endeavor on the big loop. We had you loud and clear.
Houston Station copies and concurs.
Okay, Endeavor and Station, we have you loud and clear on RF right now. We are putting it in work now, so transitioning comm system to hardline, and we'll call you back for voice checks momentarily.
So the Russian cosmonauts, Anatoly Ivanishin and Ivan Wagner, and American astronaut Chris Cassidy. There's 2 more, and 2 more coming. So it's going to be
so now that explains a lot of things about his attitude there. The commander, what's his name? Chris Cassidy? Yeah, he seems to have had a bit of a falling out with the other 2.
It's okay. He called 2 more up.
That's probably why they're not helping him.
This is Mission Control Houston. The voice you just heard was Capcom Joshua Kutrick from here in Mission Control Houston, relaying through the big loop that's integrated communications with Dragon and the International Space Station, just taking us through those procedures until we get to hatch opening. Now, there's an umbilical connection with Dragon, connecting Dragon to the International Space Station. We did get good confirmation that power is flowing from the International Space Station to Dragon. Next, we'll be proceeding with some of the communications checks. The big loop established on the C2V2 common communications for visiting vehicle through some of the last legs of the rendezvous and docking of Dragon to the International Space Station. We'll switch that over to Hardline Communications, testing that out here shortly.
I like the fact that Chris Cassidy is just used to controlling himself in this environment, which is gravityless. In weightless space, it's very hard to maintain a very solid, steady, motionless position.
Doesn't even
And you can see he's not taking any aggressive movements of any kind. He's very, very controlled. You have no idea how hard it is to do that.
Looks like there's gravity.
We're going to get some good views of station today. You see Chris Cassidy working inside Node 2. Just on the other side is the hatch. That hatch is separating between the International Space Station and the pressurized mating adapter. One more hatch to go after that. That hatch opens up to the Dragon hatch with Bob Behnken and Doug Hurley on the other side. Just surrounding Chris Cassidy from this view, you can see a series of cameras. We're going to get some great views from Node 2 there on the left, a couple of high-definition cameras. On the right, a 360 VR camera. Part of an initiative to engage viewers and provide views that from the International Space Station that have never been seen before. We'll get to see some of those 360-degree views later after they're configured and stitched on the ground, now being recorded during this historic moment today, May 31st, 2020.
May 31st, 2020. I hope they have Best Buy up there. If something goes wrong, how can I replace it?
I need to launch someone else. 19 hours. Delivery.
$2 billion there. We need an extra SD card, guys. Can you send it to us? A 1 terabyte SD card. It's about $200. But it'll cost them $2 billion.
The shipping cost.
Shipping costs $2 billion.
Affirmative, we are on the same page. Those steps in the execution note are all that's needed.
In work.
That's the next big thing for Jeff Bezos to do.
To deliver.
Deliver in space.
I think he's working on that.
He is working on that. He wants to go to Mars. You see how Chris Cassidy, he's able to stand still, motionless, to type and enter and control commands into all the computers.
I mean, this is amazing. It looks like he's standing.
But I relate to his condition. You see, he's thinking about all the bits and pieces. He's setting up the cameras, making sure all the data modules are set up properly.
That's the behind the scene of our studio.
Basically.
Before we go live.
So that must have been a very long task list for him. He's taking care of the audiovisual, the energy flow from the International Space Station to the Dragon, the entire preparation necessary for the two Americans to meet the team. He must have gone through a procedure with the rest of the crew on the International Space Station, telling them what not to say or what to say. Guys, let's agree not to tell anybody about what happened.
You're getting a live look at Chris Cassidy aboard the International Space Station. Just in front of him is that 360-degree camera. He's got cameras situated all over Node 2, pointing right towards that hatch. On the other side, we'll be welcoming Bob Behnken and Doug Hurley after pressurization of the vestibule, and we'll start beginning hatch opening after that. 5 open. 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 5 o
That was the cam mic, that thing with the long white cable.
Yeah, we copy MPEV open, Chris.
And then we lose connection, and they send us back to Earth.
Another handover of communication from the tracking and data relay satellites, providing video and audio communication from the International Space Station, now integrated with the Dragon power. Still looking towards some of those hardline communication checks. Again, we'll lose communication intermittently as the International Space Station flies 269 statute miles.
Station Houston on 2 for Chris. We're go for open on the node 2 forward hatch.
Yeah, everything is happening while they're moving around Earth.
Everything does happen while we're moving.
Even we're moving.
Even we're moving. Nothing is static. Every single thing, from the tiniest particle to the largest one, the largest object. If one thing ceases to move,
and they have connection back, and they lost it again, and it's back.
If one thing ceases to move, the universe will cease to exist.
No. Oh.
Regaining some of that video from International Space Station, Chris Cassidy given the go to open that Node 2 forward hatch. Again, he opened it a little bit earlier today to allow some of the station air to mix into the pressurized mating adapter. There it is. Now again, there's a few more hatches to open until we are able to welcome Bob and Doug aboard the International Space Station. You're looking through the hatch into the pressurized mating adapter. There's another hatch down there through the pressurized mating adapter that opens up to the International Docking Adapter.
Houston at 3, hey Josh, there was zero on DPDT, and the Node 2 forward hatch is open.
And Chris, we copy Node 2 forward hatch open. We concur your go for the next yellow activity. That's your 1515 activity. It's step 2 in 2.102 Crew Dragon ISS arrival through hatch opening. Basically, you're going to cycle the APAS equalization valve.
And Dragon SpaceX on Dragon to ground, if desired, reference procedure 4.400 to monitor vestibule pressurization.
Did you see how Chris was so fast at controlling his movement in the International Space Station?
Yeah.
He's completely well adapted to the
environment.
Weightless environment. It's incredible. So agile. I'm quite impressed.
It looks like he's walking. Wow. Very smooth.
He's actually being the cameraman, the director, the executor, the lighting mechanism, the lighting man, gaffers, electric, everything. He's setting up several cameras, microphones to document the entry, because he knows, and everybody else does know actually, that this is a historical moment. It needs to be documented in the best possible way.
Yeah.
In 360, in 2D, in 4K, in 8K, in pictures, in video, in audio, in thermal, in infrared. And of course, they're measuring the heartbeat and pressure, blood pressure of every astronaut as they walk in.
Oh, Wait.
Your Italian time, Sara.
Ecco the 3D camera. E per i nostri spettatori italiani, siamo qui live da Los Angeles. Stiamo guardando l'arrivo di 2 astronauti americani che 19 ore fa sono partiti dalla Florida, dal Kennedy Space Center, per la prima volta su una navicella commerciale della SpaceX che ha collaborato con la NASA, e dopo 19 ore di viaggio sono arrivati, l'attracco è stato perfetto, anzi qualche minuto in anticipo, e adesso stiamo aspettando l'apertura del portale per i 2 astronauti per entrare nella stazione spaziale internazionale. E il capitano della stazione sta preparando le telecamere per documentare questo momento storico.
E lui si chiama Chris Cassidy. Per i miei genitori italiani, così in Italia, a Bologna.
Dragon to ground for 4.012. We've completed up to section 5, and we've got a timer started for 1 hour.
Copy, completed through section 5, and your suits are drying, and you have started a timer for 1 hour. With that, do we have your permission to come back on board?
And the countdown has started.
We're going to be here for another hour.
Yeah. Get comfortable.
Get you back on board.
We copy. We are go to come back on board. And with that, you are go to perform sections 1 through 3 of 4.400. We do recommend deferring your step 2.1 for the waste system flush until closer to hatch opening. In section 3, as you are performing your inventory, please collect all your food and water bottle trash and consolidate it into the 2 trash bags within their common bags in location 18. You will transfer the plastic bags containing this trash to ISS for disposal during a scheduled activity after ISS ingress. And do note that you are welcome to defer this inventory until after you eat your meal that is scheduled for right about now.
This is better than British Airways.
Okay, Anna, if you could give us 5 minutes before you guys come back on board, we do have some clothing config to complete. Understand we've got to go for sections 1, 2, and 3 of 4.400. And we will consolidate our trash into the bags provided in location 18. And we'll defer the docked waste configuration section 2 of 4.400 until it gets closer to hatch opening.
Station, we copy 1507.
We copy, and we will wait 5 minutes before coming on board, and we'll check with you before we do so if we don't hear from them first.
Copy, ready.
Thanks, Anna.
This is Mission Control Houston. You're listening to crews on board the International Space Station and Dragon prepare for opening the hatch. You're seeing Chris Cassidy aboard the International Space Station already opened the hatch 2, the pressurized mating adapter just below that hatchway you see at the center of the screen here. On the other side of the hatch is the hatchway to the International docking adapter. On the other side of that, the recently docked Crew Dragon. Vestibule pressurization is underway. This will equalize the pressure between Dragon and the International Space Station. Once it does come up to pressurization, it will take some time to equalize that pressure because of the temperature difference in the vestibule. Just take some time to stabilize.
Dragon, Endeavour, it's Houston, calling you on hardline now for a voice check. How do you read?
It's fantastic to see all the preparation behind the scene. While the two astronauts are getting ready, getting out of their spacesuit, it's not an everyday view. It's incredible how still it is in zero gravity.
Endeavour, it's Houston calling. Space to ground 2 via hardline now for a voice check. Do you read?
Houston Cleveland. Dragon FM voice check. How do lead us? Counting 1 2 1, 1 2 2, 1 2 3, 1 2 4, 1 2 5. Houston Station, space to ground 2.
And Station Houston on 2. Anatoly, we hear you loud and clear. We're going to swap a couple minor things here and try Dragon again. We're just still trying to get calm with Dragon. Stand by 1.
Dragon again. Dragon FM voice check. How do lead us? Counting 1 2 1, 1 2 2, 1 2 3, 1 2 4, 1 2 5.
And Station Houston on 2. Everybody, we'll just stand by for a few minutes. We're going to try to raise Dragon by another means. Stand by.
Stand by.
And Endeavour, it's Houston calling on Dragon to ground 1. We're trying to reach you via hardline. Just not sure if you're receiving it or not. Let us know at your convenience.
And Houston from Endeavour, we're hearing quite a bit of echo on the other loop that appears to be connected. It's unintelligible, but we do have you loud and clear on the Dragon to ground.
And Endeavour, Houston on Dragon to ground. Thanks for that. Very helpful. We'll take a look, and we have you loud and clear on Dragon to ground as well. So we're gonna continue to work it and try to give you a call back in the next few minutes on hardline.
Endeavour copies. Thanks.
This is Mission Control Houston, working through the steps to pressurize the vestibule. We did have confirmation that vestibule pressurization was underway. We do have power flowing from the International Space Station to Dragon after it docked for a contact and capture at 9:16 a.m. Central Time, 10:16 a.m. Eastern, just earlier this morning. A few other milestones to reach. We need good audio communication hard-lined through the umbilical where Dragon is currently docked on the other side of that hatch, providing now power, just making sure those hardline communications are intact. Working through that as we count down towards the milestones of opening that hatch.
Audio feedback problems happen everywhere, even in space. Sound engineers, it's the worst nightmare.
SpaceX Dragon on Dragon to ground.
Go ahead.
Yeah, and in section 1 of 4.400, the tablet state of charge are 66 for Doug's and 32 for mine.
Copy. 66 for Doug, 32 for Bob. And do we have your permission to come back on board with video now?
Yeah, go ahead and come on board. We just may have to take it down at some point, as you might imagine, but come on board.
Sounds great. Thanks.
Station Houston on 3 for Chris. Your convenience, but just an update on the comm status.
Yes, sir. Go ahead.
Chris, you've probably been able to tell we've run into some minor issues trying to get hardline established, so we're working that here, and we're going to be reattempting the comm checks as soon as we think we're go. I'll give you a heads up on that. And then regarding stuff, just get aheads. I was going to pass along to do the teardown from steps 3 and 4 in the approach monitoring, but I just saw it go gray, so have you done that already?
Hold on just 1 second. Which one was that? Maybe I fat fingered the wrong procedure.
Yeah, no, it's subtle. So it's in the execution note for Dragon approach monitoring. As we were monitoring Dragon earlier in the day, down in the execution note are the teardown steps.
I'm here in the cupola right now. I'll take care of it. It's not gray, but momentarily will be.
Sounds good. And I'm also hearing on that we have done on the ground steps 1 through 4, so it's just 5 and 6 left for you in that teardown procedure.
Copy that. Rush on 3, steps 5 and 6 are complete in the teardown.
Copy, Chris. Thanks for that. And just about to hit the button and reattempt the hardline checks with Dragon.
Okay, copy.
Endeavor, it's Houston calling via hardline. Voice check. How do you read?
Say again.
And station standby, Endeavor. This is a call for Endeavor via hardline. Voice check. How do you read?
Houston, Endeavor, completely unreadable. It's skipping pretty badly.
And Endeavor, it's Houston on Dragon to ground. We heard your reply loud and clear. Understand we're still broken. We're working it. Thanks for the patience.
We got you, Josh. That's exactly the case. Thanks.
Dragon FM voice check. How to read me? Counting 121, 122, 123, 124, 125.
And station on 2 for Anatoly. Anatoly, we're hearing you loud and clear in Houston. We seem to have an issue still with COM2 Dragon, so we'll just have you stand by. We'll let you know when we're ready to retry. Thanks for your patience.
Okay, call me on space to ground 1, please.
What a fantastic view. This is incredible. docking complete. You can see Earth and the sun is lighting up the International Space Station. Wow. Incredible.
SpaceX Dragon on Dragon to ground for a timeline tag up.
Go ahead.
Yeah, Anna, we're managing the collection of the used water bottles and other items, as well as our meal, and just looking to understand a little bit better how closely we're to hatch opening or another timeline milestone. We're kind of running to the end of the tablet here with meal 5 that started about, 25 minutes ago or so, and so just wanting to understand how much time we've got in front of us.
In Dragon SpaceX, we estimate we are about an hour to Dragon hatch opening.
Copy that, Anna. Thanks for those words. It just helps us manage getting things done. And looks like you guys are on board. Welcome aboard, I guess, the integrated space station now, huh?
Indeed. Thank you so much. We're excited to be here.
Endeavor, Houston calling over hardline for a voice check. How do you read us now?
Houston or station from Endeavor. I'm not sure the location of that last call, but still quite a bit of skipping and unreadable.
And Endeavor, it's Houston, loud and clear on Dragon to ground. We heard your response, so we're in the same situation. We're hearing you, you're not hearing us. We have one more troubleshooting item that we're going to put in work now, so we'll give that a try and then maybe call it for the day. We'll let you know.
Endeavor copies. Thanks, Houston.
Endeavor Houston calling via hardline for a final voice check. Do you have us now?
Houston, Dragon on the big loop, that was an improvement, but it's still completely unreadable.
And Endeavor, Houston on Dragon to ground 1, we're still hearing you 5x5. Understand it was slightly improved. Were you able to read me at all, or is it unuseful?
Yeah, it was a slight improvement, but it's still unintelligible, almost every word. There was maybe one word that you could have sort of figured out, but that was about it.
Okay, thank you for the feedback. First time, obviously, and we think we're running into some interference issues, but we'll continue to take a look.
We copy, thanks.
So here are our astronauts getting ready with all the equipment. And it was very interesting to listen about, the bottle of water and all the recycling and the waste.
It's quite incredible. I just saw what kind of socks they have and how much things have to be prepared before someone is accepted on the International Space Station. Next time you go to the airport and you're wondering why it's taking so long to get on the airplane, remember this moment, how long it took for the 2 astronauts to get on the International Space Station. Obviously, I'm kidding, but still inspires you. You know that aviation is a complex endeavor, and not because it's safer than any other mode of transportation, then you take it for granted. The amount of preparation necessary for an airplane to fly, whether it's commercial or fighter jet, requires concentration, focus, and discipline, and determination, and devotion, and dedication to be able to get all the systems that needs to be checked. Accidents and disasters usually happen because of lack in these areas. So there you are on the International Space Station. I can see on the top side of the screen there is a view of the Earth. Or something else. What is it, Sarah?
I think it's the screen. It's the touch screen, the blue touch screen.
I'm going to put you on camera, okay?
Hi. Have you been enjoying it so far? That's incredible. It's really incredible.
Yeah, sorry for the extended periods of silence. They're important extended periods of silence. And I intended it to be silent like that so that you can get the feeling, the reality of what it takes to be in space and to be in the position of an astronaut. It isn't all fun and games like they show you in movies. It's very important to be able to see and feel and live the experience of being in space and what it takes to be in space and the amount of safety, health and safety regulations and procedures that needs to be conducted, including other security issues. It isn't just simple hopping on and off of a public bus.
Yeah.
So,
but it might become like that in the near future. No, not near future, but in the future.
In the very, very distant future, even when it becomes a public transport, it won't be casual.
No, it won't be casual.
Yeah. Even the procedure of getting on and off of a public bus, which I haven't taken in a bit, it is a procedure. You have to have the right change. You have to have the correct amount
This is Mission Control Houston. If you're tuning in to our coverage, you're getting a live look at the International Space Station Flight Control Room. You're hearing a lot of communications from the International Space Station, both from the space station side over space to ground. NASA astronaut Chris Cassidy, International Space Station Commander, setting up for the hatch opening. You can see a series of cameras scattered around, ready to capture the best views of Bob and Doug coming through that hatch. We did get confirmation just shortly that we did have good pressurization of the vestibule. It'll be about 10 minutes to perform a series of leak checks. Again, that pressure needs to stabilize. The thermal conditions make it swing just a little bit, so just waiting for that to stabilize before those leak checks are finalized. That underway within the next 10 minutes. We do have communications settled in the hardline connection between International Space Station and Dragon. You can see from the inside of Dragon now, the crew doffed or took off their suits, just getting a few things packed up before they eventually open up the hatch after that pressurization is equalized between Space Station and Dragon.
Endeavor, it's Houston calling for a voice check over the big loop. We've retransitioned back to RF, so back to RF. How do you hear us?
At least in the very near future. That's how long it will take for commercial or non-commercial space flights will take in order for this transition to occur. If you were actually taking, say,
Houston
a space shuttle
Big Loop, was that com check for us?
To a space hotel.
Yeah, affirmative, Endeavor. It's Houston. We transitioned back to RF because we still had the interference over hardline. So we're back on RF now and just want to make sure we had you.
We've got you loud and clear on RF.
Loud and clear as well. We're just going to leave it here for now. Thank you.
So in the future, they're going to have space hotels. So all you got to do is get on a rocket or a space shuttle type vehicle, and there will be a docking procedure similar to this Dragon International Space Station docking procedure. Hopefully, it will be much more trimmed and truncated in some way or form, and health and safety.
Here's a live look from inside the crew Dragon. You're seeing Bob Benkin and Doug Hurley just preparing the inside of Dragon. They have doffed or taken off their suits. The pressurization between space station and Dragon is complete. They just need to perform some leak checks, make sure that pressure is stable before they actually open the hatch. Teams working together on the ground, International Space Station Flight Control Room and the Flight Control Room in Hawthorne to get that big loop communication configured so everyone can hear each other through this process, figured out a workaround using RF connection.
It's amazing. I was just commenting on the amount of space, how spacious it is inside the Dragon. The fact that they can stand fully and take on and off their spacesuits and depressurize and do all the preparations that they are required to do. Obviously, this is the camera that we're looking at. This is the angle in which they, Doug and Bob, were sitting on these seats now empty. And so the design of the interior of the Dragon is interesting, that right behind the screens, you can actually stand and move around, as opposed to the interior design of, say, the Apollo capsules and Saturn V's, which were very cumbersome and awkward, and the entire control panels very uncomfortable. Entire control panels were basically part of the body of the actual capsule. With this one, because they're flat screens and touch screens and technology is advanced, you can actually walk around behind the screens. It's amazing. It's quite magnificent, really. And here's another angle from inside. Where you can actually, this is pretty big. They have all the supplies. Obviously, they brought supplies to the International Space Station as well, the supplies that's needed for them to be on the International Space Station. You can actually see the spacesuit that they took off all the way at the very far, the furthest seat, because the Dragon has 4 seats, and that last seat, they used it to put a spacesuit on it. Obviously, it would make sense that they're going to leave the spacesuit inside the Dragon and go inside the International Space Station without it, saving space inside. This is how they sit. And this is how they, that was a good demonstration of how they access the seats. It's quite clever because it took into consideration weightlessness. You see, it's designed to be in space so that they understand that you can slide in and out very easily. Not when you're on Earth, though. With the space suit, you have to slide in there. So it's uncomfortable on Earth, but very comfortable in space, as opposed to the Apollo, which was very comfortable on Earth and very uncomfortable in space.
And then on Earth, you have help when you're on Earth.
Yes.
Rather than here, it's just you.
That's right.
Yeah. We were wondering what are they talking about. It's kind of like
wait. Say that again.
We are wondering what are they talking about, because you can see they're preparing and getting ready, and we made some funny comments like, "Where's my passport?" See, and then maybe they cannot find the dinosaurs that they brought with them. Their kids asked them to bring one dinosaur's toy with them in space.
Wow, Sara, you have an imagination.
No, it's true.
What is true? That they are bringing dinosaurs with them?
Yes, there's a dinosaur toy.
Oh, on board.
On board, yes.
This is Mission Control Houston. If you're just joining us, you're getting a look inside the Crew Dragon. That was Bob Bankhead seated on the right side, the pilot seat, or the Joint Operations Mission Commander seat for Demo-2. He and Doug Hurley, the commander of the spacecraft, just preparing the inside, putting away some trash. They just doffed their suits, and right now just waiting for the pressure to equalize between the International Space Station and Bob and Doug. Just two hatches, really, separating them from the inside of the orbiting complex. Aboard International Space Station, Commander Chris Cassidy has been outfitting Node 2. It's the first node. Once you cross over some of the hatchways, there it is. You can see some of the cameras positioned around to capture the crew coming in to the International Space Station. Much of that work completed at this point. Really, at this point, just waiting for good leak checks between Station and Dragon.
Station Huntsville, Space to Ground 3 for Chris on the ISS experience.
Right on 3.
Chris, we're not seeing good connection between the SSC-25 and the camera. We're coming up on a handover, but they're looking for a reboot of SSC-25.
Reboot 25, copy.
SpaceX Dragon on Dragon to ground for inventory.
I am here and ready to copy.
It's quite amazing what they're doing. Trying to connect all the cameras to the right audio feeds. And by the way, this is the 5th SpaceX Dragon capsule to head to the International Space Station. This is not the first one. This is the first manned one, I think. One test flight and 3 operational cargo missions have made the spacecraft a regular visitor to the orbitory laboratory. Standing more than 14 feet tall and with a diameter of 12 feet, Dragon can carry more than 13,000 pounds of material into orbit inside its pressurized cabin. And the unpressurized trunk, the trunk, which holds the solar arrays, is discarded and then ended the mission to burn up in the atmosphere just before the capsule re-enters and parachutes to the ocean, where it is recovered. The Dragon even has wings, sort of. After the spacecraft separates from the second stage, it will open a pair of solar array wings to charge its batteries. Of course, even though they give the Dragon the appearance of a bird, the array provides nothing other than a power source, since there is virtually no air at altitude. And obviously, air provides you with lift when you have wings. So it's just a design feature, but it's just pure solar panels. What's incredible about all this? Go ahead, Sarah. What were you going to say?
No, it's very intriguing to see how they're preparing their bags and everything, all their belongings and all the equipment.
They're having trouble with the audio-visual feeds, and that's what they've been trying to configure.
So they didn't have trouble stocking, but they had trouble with the audio and visual.
I copy 1 dinner from 321, 1 breakfast from 319, 1 lunch from 310. And am I correct to conclude all of this includes your consumption from the lunch that you just completed?
They're going to eat inside the station.
That's correct, Anna. We've finished eating, and the lunch we just completed is a good complete list of what I've read down to you so far. The only thing we have remaining is the flush of the waste system here, and we'll do that with a water bottle and report when we do that a little bit later.
Copy. That sounds like a perfect plan. Thank you so much.
Just a fun fact about why the spacecraft is called Dragon.
Okay, with that, that's the extent of our inventory. All else is per the packing plan.
Wow.
Copy. All else per the packing plan.
So they had their lunch and breakfast inside the Dragon.
So again, Dragon is named after the fictional Puffed Dragon.
This is Mission Control Houston. You've seen Chris Cassidy, International Space Station Commander, do much of the setup, but he does have 2 crew members on board, both Russian cosmonauts. Next to him right now is Ivan Wagner, rookie space flyer that was on the same Soyuz spacecraft that Chris Cassidy launched on from the Baikonur Cosmodrome just a little more than a month ago. Also on board is Russian cosmonaut Anatoly Ivanishin.
So there was this band, 60s and 70s, Peter, Paul, and Mary, wrote a song called Puff the Magic Dragon. And that's where the dragon came from.
Interesting.
In 2013, SpaceX celebrated its 10th anniversary and secured $1.6 billion deal with NASA to provide 12 unmanned cargo flights to the International Space Station. So this is how we finally got here, because that's a renewed deal after the first initial 12 unnamed cargo flights. What's incredible about all this is that Elon Musk does want to go to Mars. Jeff Bezos does want to go to Mars. There are a bunch of people that want to go to Mars. And Trump wants to own Mars.
I want to go to Mars.
So if President Trump is listening, please consider me as one of your supporters on board of your first flight to Mars.
Let's book the tickets from now. Advance. It's incredible to see inside. They probably will give us a tour, I hope, when they arrive. Wow.
Yeah, what's amazing is that apparently Tony Stark, the character from Iron Man, Robert Downey Jr., was inspired by Elon Musk and his personality to play Tony Stark. And it's interesting. We're back again to the dragon.
This is Mission Control Houston. We are coming up on almost 2 hours since the Crew Dragon made contact and was captured by at the International Space Station's forward International Docking Adapter. That happened at 9:16 a.m. Central, 10:16 a.m. Eastern. Still working through some of those milestones, equalizing the pressure between Dragon and International Space Station, verifying some of the communications. And of course, you see Bob Behnken and Doug Hurley inside, continuing to prepare the inside of their vessel before they make their way inside the orbiting complex.
SpaceX Dragon on Dragon to ground. Do you mind taking the cameras down for just a few minutes here?
We will put that in work and let you know when it's done.
That was amazing. I like that they requested the cameras to switch to, not to them basically, just to switch out away from them so that they can conduct procedures for their non-public viewing, because obviously there are a few.
This is Mission Control
things.
Houston. You heard the call from Bob Benkin, Joint Operations Mission Commander of the Demo-2 mission, taking down some of those video feeds. We're still waiting for some of those milestones to pass before actually opening the hatch. The Dragon crew continuing to get themselves ready before opening the hatch. Chris Cassidy on the other side, just preparing some of the camera views, making sure everything's set there, done even a little bit ahead of time. We do have confirmation that there is a good data connection path between Dragon and the International Space Station. Some of those checks underway next. Coming up on 2 hours since docking at 9:16 a.m. Central, 10:16 a.m. Eastern.
They got dressed.
Space Station on 3. The SSC's been rebooted. Any success?
You're still having audio-visual feed problems.
Hey Chris, we see good connection between the SSC and the camera, and we're just performing the calibration now. We'll start recording shortly. Thanks for your help.
No problem. Happy to help.
Dragon SpaceX, we have gone exterior with the cameras.
Dragon copy, thanks.
He got changed to welcome.
Yes, they're putting on their best clothes. What's incredible is, despite whether there are good or bad intentions, whatever political background, the most important thing is that the dedicated people with high morality are the ones that end up executing these type of missions. It is not quite possible to be so scientifically inclined and immoral at the same time. It's almost a evidence to how scientific thinking, proper scientific thinking, not just semi-scientific, but proper scientific thinking actually puts you on the path of being inevitably moral, because it makes no sense to be immoral.
Logic.
It's not just logic, it's also understanding that there are higher purposes at stake. It's not worth it to be immoral in situations when you are serving civilization for generations to come.
Yeah. Another camera?
Part of the success is due to the level of accuracy adopted in most of the procedures implemented in these endeavors. Accuracy requires a high level of focus, dedication, and morality. You can't be accurate and immoral. It's either 2 + 2 = 4, or they don't. as you can imagine, if you live on board of the International Space Station for a prolonged period of time.
Again, you're getting a look at the inside of the International Space Station. That's NASA astronaut Chris Cassidy, commander of Expedition 63. Continuing to get some of those cameras configured for hatch opening. Many milestones already passed after docking at 9:16 a.m. Central, almost 2 hours ago at this point. At the time of docking, the International Space Station was on Russian thrusters. After contact and capture was moved over to control moment gyro.
You see, guys, this is a call if anybody at NASA is watching. Next time you have problems with the audiovisuals, just call me. And I'm one of those guys that solves a lot of the issues with cameras and visual effects and problems with audio feedback, digital rerouting. A lot of the digital rerouting issues are caused by what I call software entanglement. So if you're listening and you have an issue with audio feedback or routing with cameras, check audio-visual drivers. And even though you might have the right software and you've tested it on Earth, it might be the sequence in which you turn things on and off that would actually solve that problem. So whatever sequence you've conducted on Earth, you should repeat it again now, and you'll probably be able to successfully complete the coupling of audio sources with the visual sources. I'm rambling.
Adapter, and the other is the hatch of Dragon itself.
So I saw Commander Cassidy earlier on take on a camcorder down that hatch at the bottom of the screen here. And they have on board of the International Space Station a bunch of cameras. I'm not I can't say I'm glad to hear this, but or to mention it, but they are very Nikon camera biased. They have a Nikon D1 on board of the International Space Station, as well as a D200, a D3, a D3X, a D3S, a D4, a D800E, a D5, and a Sony A7S Mark II, which is a fantastic mirrorless camera. And they have multi-function devices with camera features like the iPhone 4, an HTC Nexus 1, an iPad 2.
SpaceX Dragon with a couple of questions.
I am here and ready to copy.
Hey, Anna. We show about an hour and 11 minutes since we started drying the suits, just to let you know that. And then the other thing is we can put 4.400 section 2 in work if you think we have some time before we get the hatch open.
We copy. You are go to stop drying your suits and turn off that suit fan at this time. Let me get you words on that waste system flush.
Okay. We'll shut the suit fan off now.
What's amazing as well is that apart from having the iPhone 4,
in
the
Dragon
HTC Nexus
SpaceX,
1,
we are about a half hour prior to hatch open, so you are go to do that waste system flush if that sounds good to you at this time.
fantastic.
Half an hour to go.
Half an hour. So I just wanted to finish the various devices that's on board on the International Space Station from as far as multifunctional and audiovisual. Apart from this, the Nikon and the Sony cameras, they have the iPhone 4, the HTC Nexus 1, iPad 2, and they've installed hardware and experimental devices like the high-definition Earth viewing system, which the HDEV, as well as the 4x3 standard definition CCTV camera, which we saw earlier, which had the vertical letterbox viewing. They also have the EHDCA and Nikon D4 in special housing with motor controlled zoom from 28 to 300, which is an incredible lens. It goes from 28 millimeter to 300. And they have, of course, incredible computers, 2 Raspberry Pi computers, one equipped with a standard camera and one with the infrared camera.
That we do PAO events if that's something that's preferred. It really is super fast, and I can get you that way in that config real quick if you need it. Later.
Copy, Chris. Yeah, copy. Thanks for that. We'll offer it up, and I'll let you know if we want to go that way.
Copy. Obviously not urgent or important, just throwing it out there.
Station Houston on 3 for Chris, comm config.
Go ahead.
We just wanted to clarify from your last comments. We show it as being in the standard config, whereby you're going to be coming down over the camcorder HD mic, and we'll be going up over Space to Ground 2, and that's what we're intending. Did you maybe just we might have missed your intent in your previous remarks. Is that what you had in mind?
Oh, I had, like we do all other PAO events, we talk, we hold the handheld microphone that is going through the clip-on mic transmitter to the clip-on through the camera, and then the audio comes down through the encoder. That's how we typically do PAO events. So I could go back to that config if you need, super fast, or if you want to do it this way where we're talking on Space to Ground 2, that's fine too. I don't care. Just throwing it out there because it's different than we normally do PAO events.
Standby.
And just to be clear, the config we're in now is the Node 2 camera is not connected to the encoder, as you probably know. So all I would do is just plug the cable back into the encoder and switch back over to the nominal Node 2 camcorder.
And Chris, that is clear. The camera needs to be plugged into the encoder. So what you're saying is what we need. We don't know where it got swapped up, but the camera should definitely be plugged into the encoder, and audio is coming down via that encoder.
Okay, so yeah, we'll just use it on the, I guess what I was thinking is going back to one without a battery and not be dependent on the battery, and going back over to the nominal cable, which includes power. I just get a little leery about relying on these batteries.
Copy. We have Photo TV online, so we're talking to them on the phone right now. Standby one. Station Houston on 3 for Chris. Microphone and the free float camera both connected to the encoder. Does that clear it up?
Okay, copy all. You want the free float camera, and we'll use the handheld microphone through the ATU. Copy all. No problem. I think I'm not communicating. No pun intended. But I think we're in a good config now, and I won't swap over to the nominal Node 2 camera.
Down by Chris. Station Houston 3, Chris. If you're still there, we think we still have it backwards. So I see you look. Yeah, I see in the video now. So we still have PAO on the line. Sorry for the confusion, but I think this much is clear. This morning, we moved cameras. We swapped the cameras that were connected to the encoder. What we want now, we're getting video from the free float camera through the encoder, so that's good. We're seeing it right now. What we need, just relaying here, is your lapel mic. That has to go through that new free float camera, so that your mic connects to the free float camera, and then that audio comes down through the encoder. Does that make sense?
That's the config it's in right now, and that's all perfect. The only benefit, I guess, I didn't initially make it clear is if I switch back to the normal cable and the normal camera, we're not dependent on a battery power on the camera. I just am worried that throughout this whole event, we're gonna that all of a sudden the battery's gonna go out. I go back to the nominal.
SpaceX Dragon on Dragon to ground. Report complete with 4.012.
Benefit to this free flow camera is
complete with
4.012. Make it all the way into the Dragon, which I don't think we could do with the other cable. So my thought was, after we do all of the ingress stuff and we switch gears to the PAO ceremony when we're standing right in front of the hatch, we could have actual power to the camera. But it's really no big deal. What I'll do is I have got a couple batteries on standby, and I'll just make sure there's a fresh battery right before we start that PAO event.
Okay, Chris, sorry it took so long, but I'm 100% with you, and copy 100% on the battery concern. The word we're getting here is we would like to run it in the config that it's in right now. We copy all on the battery config. Great idea to have a few spares nearby, but we think it's going to last throughout the whole event.
Okay, copy all.
And Station Houston on 3 for Chris. With that out of the way, you have a go when able for your 1615 activity. 1615, that's your go for steps 3 and 4 in 2.102 Crew Dragon ISS arrival.
Okay, 1615 activity, inward.
Endeavor, Houston calling on hardline for a voice check. Endeavor, Houston calling via hardline for a voice check.
Loud and clear, how was?
Hey, Endeavor, Houston, we have you loud and clear on hardline. Great news.
Well, congrats. Sounds like we got it at least somewhat sorted out.
Affirmative, concur. We think we might have found an interference between C2V2 and the hardline system, but we're going to keep it here for now and proceed down the timeline.
Never copies.
Houston on 3. Hey, can you back me up on the PDT?
Will do. We're checking. Station Houston on 2. Chris, TPDT is good. You're good to continue.
Copy, thanks.
This is Mission Control Houston. You're looking at the inside of the International Space Station. What you were hearing before were just some of the audio and video checks, just making sure that everything's synced up so that we get the best views and the best audio possible for when Bob Behnken and Doug Hurley come through that hatch. We're working towards the hatch opening now. You can see Chris Cassidy down the pressurized mating adapter. That hatch will open up to the international docking adapter. On the other side is the Dragon hatch. Cassidy working through those procedures after pressure equalization was complete. Now expecting around the order of 10 to 15 minutes maybe until we finally get that hatch open. So we'll stand by, keep those views coming from the inside of the International Space Station to welcome Bob and Doug aboard.
Wow, it's taking longer to set up the audio and video features and not because these technicalities, we experience them here as well sometimes, are very intricate, and also they had to wait for the temperature to drop and to pressurize the cabin, the Dragon inside. There were the two astronauts inside the Dragon. They were preparing all the material, so it took time. But we're happy to be live with you. This is the view of the mission control at the Kennedy Space Center in Florida. And it's amazing that two humans right now are in space trying to get inside the International Space Station. It is just the beginning of something greater, that we're going to go to the moon and to Mars. And Planet Gliss is here to inspire you and to reignite your passion for space. And we hope that with these lives, we manage to bring you back your interest in space exploration.
This is Mission Control Houston. You're looking at the live view of the inside of the International Space Station Flight Control Room. The team here, Orbit 2 team, led by Flight Director Scoville, is working through the intricate process of making sure everything is ready to open the hatch and welcome Bob Began and Doug Hurley aboard the International Space Station. It's been a journey so far to get to this point. More than 2 hours ago, made contact and capture with the International Space Station was the Dragon vehicle, the Crew Dragon vehicle, with Bob Behnken and Doug Hurley aboard, 9:16 a.m. Central, 10:16 a.m. Eastern.
Dragon FM, voice check. How to read me? Counting. 1, 2, 1,
30-minute
1,
timer that
2,
you gave
2,
us a little
1,
bit
2,
earlier.
3, 1, 2, 4, 1, 2, 5.
Here, and then give you go to come back on board.
In Dragon SpaceX, you were pretty broken in that previous call.
Here's some stations with ground 2. I don't hear Dragon.
I think you're being summoned by the Russian crew. In Dragon SpaceX, I was told to proceed with you. Can you please repeat your last?
Yeah, Anna, just wanted to double check with you to make sure you had copied our last and that we were still good on that estimated timer that you gave us for 30 minutes. It looks like we've got about 10 minutes left. So we'd like to pick up in section 2 of 4.400.
Checking.
This is Mission Control Houston. Chris Cassidy opens the hatch to the International Docking Adapter, 11:37 a.m. Central Time. Station and Dragon flying together, 267 statute miles over the South Pacific. This is a view from the camera at the forward end of Dragon.
20 minutes until Dragon hatch opened, and the APAS hatch was just opened.
Again, 11:37 a.m. Central. The hatch to the International Docking Adapter was open. You see Chris Cassidy there poking his head in. That's the camera at the forward end of the Dragon.
Just to be very clear here, we've spent almost an hour with the International Space Station docking with the Dragon spacecraft that just arrived with Doug and Bob from Earth today, May 31st, 2020. And it was amazing to witness how long it took them to set up the cameras. They have, I listed most of the equipment that they actually have on board for the audiovisual. And they had predominantly a bunch of Nikon cameras and a Sony S7 Mark II, which is an older mirrorless, an A7S Mark II, which is a mirrorless camera. But I did see there here, if you look on the right hand side, there's a camcorder. I think this is a Sony camcorder, unless it's a Panasonic. Could be a Panasonic or a Sony, but this looks like a Sony design. It's probably an HDV or something higher, like a 2K. And I think that they're making various choices about which camera to put in which direction and in which section of the International Space Station and the hatch and the actual corridor between the Dragon dock area to the International Space Station. And what's amazing about all this is that the LED lighting and panels that they're using and the various other equipment that they need to set up in order for the audiovisual to work correctly is quite cumbersome and it's not streamlined. They should have consulted someone like me to be able to streamline the entire process. And I'm quite astounded by why they hadn't implemented some kind of a procedure to be able to set up all these cameras prior to the docking. I'm not sure why they had to set up cameras and lighting after docking. Was it because, I mean, even if they didn't know whether the Dragon is on its way or not, I think it was there's some other reason why. That can't be.
They might have been busy with other scheduling. Yeah.
Yeah, maybe they were busy with other things, but they should have implemented in their schedule on the International Space Station a procedure to set up lighting and camera prior to the docking. I just want to talk about the lenses that they have here because I'm a filmmaker predominantly. I'm a space and cosmology enthusiast, but predominantly a filmmaker. The Nikon cameras, like the D4 Nikon camera that they have on board of the International Space Station, includes the 24 to 70 millimeter, which is an f2.8 lens. So I'm actually quite astounded it's not a faster lens. But they use it for the for VR. It's at f2.8 ED VR, and they have another lens which is the 800 millimeter f5.6, which is an FL ED VR as well. And then they have another Nikon with autofocus SFX TC14E Mark III with a 1.4 times teleconverter. So they have an extensive amount of audiovisual and photography and video equipment on board. So then that means that they have a priority for photographing and documenting audiovisual events on board of the International Space Station. I think they ought to integrate a procedure to streamline the setup of such cameras. And I would maybe recommend smaller size cameras with a lot more sensitive sensors with a lot more faster lenses that are easily adjustable, and it can be Wi-Fi connected so that you can have audio and visual transmission from each camera with a smart key, assignable smart key addresses that can then go to one server, and that would be switchable from Earth, so you can have effectively a technical director on Earth in Houston in mission control. This is just a suggestion. If you're listening, Houston, this is what you could probably do in the future, and you'll be able to in fact direct an entire audiovisual program from Earth in real time as astronauts are docking and entering the International Space Station. But predominantly, most of the camera choices that I see here, which includes, by the way, the Kodak 760C, the DCS 760, and they have commercial 4K video footage cameras. I think that's the A7S II, the Sony. I think these cameras are quite outdated, cumbersome, and big and large, and cumbersome to operate. I would greatly advise for a revamping of that entire gear. But who am I to say? You guys probably are the experts, and you might have a phenomenal reason for that, for these choices. But
what is he doing now?
He's setting up diffusers for the lighting. He's, because the lighting is harsh. He's also rigging a lot of arm holders, arm mechanisms that hold lighting and cameras.
But why is it in black and white?
This is because it's an old CCTV camera that he rigged, because they're using every single camera that they have on board, the old ones, the new ones, in order to document as much as possible. So, and he's trying now, I think, to seal the door, the hatch, the pressure door between the, I don't know, something. I have no idea. I don't want to really talk about something I don't know about. But let's hear what they're talking about.
Still looking at Cassidy doing some of the prep work for that hatch. We'll get some great views that Cassidy set up over the past few hours to capture this historic moment today. Be sure to stay tuned in at 12:15 p.m. Central Time, 1:15 p.m. Eastern. We'll start a welcome ceremony, officially welcoming Bob Behnken and Doug Hurley aboard the International Space Station to join the Expedition 63 crew.
SpaceX Dragon on Dragon to ground.
Go ahead.
Anna, you're clear to come on board.
Copy. Clear to come on board, and thanks for your patience with the comm. We are in an orientation that's creating some blockage to receive your comm on Dragon to ground.
Yeah, we figured that was it. No problem. That's part of the deal.
Chris Cassidy giving a wave, eagerly awaiting Bob and Doug to come aboard. Just behind him, you see Anatoly Ivanishin and Ivan Wagner, Russian cosmonauts of Expedition 63, standing by. We'll be able to come aboard Dragon here in a sec, get some views from the crew Dragon. We're in a short handover of those communications from the International Space Station. Video and audio should be regaining them momentarily.
I also want to correct myself. This is not the Kennedy Space Center. That was Houston in Texas. Mission control.
One more time.
I wanted to correct myself. What we saw just before, it wasn't for the Kennedy Space Center in Florida, but it what we were seeing before, and I wanted to correct, is not the Kennedy Space Center in Florida, but is Mission Control Houston in Texas.
Anatoly Ivanishin in the foreground there. Chris Cassidy continuing the prep work for opening up the hatch there. Again, the pressurized mating adapter hatch you see there in the foreground is open. The APAS hatch to the International Docking Adapter is open. Just one more, and that's the hatch of Dragon, the Crew Dragon vehicle.
Houston Station, space to ground 2 station is ready for Dragon hatch equalization.
Station Houston copies. Dragon call ready when you're able.
Dragon hatch equalization. They're about to equalize the pressure between the two vehicles, the two space contraptions.
Houston Dragon, go ahead.
And Dragon Houston, just looking to confirm that you're ready for hatch equalization.
They just that's the music for the hatch equalization.
Okay, Station and Endeavour, stand by for equalization. We're putting it in work. Expected equalization time 4 minutes.
Station copies.
Just kidding. Hatch equalization, stand by. That's Microsoft theme. Bill Gates must be proud. As you can see that they had a little bit of flashes of light. They're testing their photography and the flashes. It's quite an extensive setup for the photography, video, and audio coverage of the two astronauts' entry. It's a big deal, and I still think that they needed to streamline the process and maybe have it prepared before the docking. But I would love to hear in the comments anyone that knows why that wasn't the case. But it's quite astounding and incredible to witness. It's a historical moment. Doug and Bob enter the International Space Station.
This is Mission Control Houston. We're continuing to equalize the pressure of that last hatch. Behind that hatch is Bob Behnken and Doug Hurley aboard the Crew Dragon spacecraft. We are moments away from opening the hatch and welcoming them aboard the International Space Station.
That's amazing.
They're getting ready. Finally, after almost 3 hours from docking. The first commercial mission.
Here we go.
Here they go.
You see, they've been rigging all these lights. This is what took all the time. You see the LED panel rigged with this articulated arm on the right-hand side. And then on the other side, there's another articulated arm. And then this is the hatch on top of the screen that was being prepped by Cassidy.
This is Mission Control Houston. If you're just tuning in, we are standing by for confirmation of the hatch opening between the International Space Station and the Crew Dragon.
It must be a very weird feeling for the International Space Station's crew to have a visitor, a visiting aircraft from Earth. I get excited when I receive an Amazon package. Can you imagine they feeling? It's incredible. Here they are. They're making a move to actually go in. Here is the hatch.
There's the
that's
hatch
about
to
to be
the
open.
Crew Dragon. Seeing Doug Hurley through the glass on the other side.
That's incredible. Adesso.
Here we are.
And there's Bob Behnken.
Wow. This cable flying. Incredible.
Still equalizing that pressure between Crew Dragon and International Space Station, just moments away.
I can just imagine the crew of the ISS. What would they be thinking? Because they're actually hosting 2 new guests. They're all sharing close quarters together in space. Yeah. There is no room for attitude issues or housekeeping issues or conflicts. Whose trash day is it? Who's supposed to be cleaning the kitchen afterwards? Whose turn is it to organize all the data or the cameras or the audio or communicate with Earth or wake up early or watchdog turn? It's interesting. They must be psychologically
trained
and actually very robust and stable.
On Big Loop, you are go for hatch opening per the decal, followed by the remaining actions in your procedure 4.400.
You know what the procedure action is?
No.
Is your task list. But they have hundreds of
copies. Go for hatch opening and remaining steps in 4.400.
There you go.
2,000 years later.
Wow.
They had the system reboot a couple of times to make things work properly.
Yeah. So after 19 hours flying from Earth to the International Space Station, almost 3 hours to get ready to document these important moments. All the eyes from Earth are there.
Virtually. They're not actually there, but yes, are watching. Not only they've set up the cameras, they must have talked to George Lucas for setting up the THX sound system. The sound does work. Surround.
Yeah, come in. Wow, I can see.
We know that, Sara.
It's open.
Is open 12:02 p.m. Central Time, 1:02 p.m. Eastern. Bob Behnken and Doug Hurley opened the hatch to the International Space Station after launching from American soil on a U.S. vehicle for the first time in 9 years, the first time ever for a commercially built spacecraft.
What astounding. Amazing. What do you think, Sara? It's amazing. No?
It's amazing. It's amazing. I'm in awe. Incredible.
God is watching. God is watching.
It's happening. It's happening.
And we're back.
I am Groot.
No, I am Groot.
Come on, please encourage them.
If you're just tuning in, the hatches are open between Dragon and the International Space Station. International Space Station Commander Chris Cassidy now talking with Doug Hurley and Bob Behnken aboard the Crew Dragon spacecraft. That hatch opened at 12:02 p.m. Central, 1:02 p.m. Eastern.
Phenomenal. And Doug.
Checking the last name.
SpaceX Dragon on the big loop. The hatch is open in 5.54.400. How copy?
I copy. Hatch is open. Great to hear. Thanks.
She's speaking from Hawthorne, Los Angeles, right next to LAX, around the corner.
And SpaceX Dragon in 5.9, we're going to exit out of 4.400 and transition to 2.102 Crew Dragon ISS arrival through the hatch opening.
I copy. With that, I understand you are complete with 4.400 and will follow along with you as you transition to the ISS procedure.
That's their iPad.
Is it an iPad?
I don't know. It looks like. I'm not sure if the brand.
These are the touch screens that they put in the Tesla cars. At least the middle one is exactly the same like the one they put in the cars.
Completing the last tasks. Do you think they're tweeting? We're here. We made it. Here they are.
There you go, man.
This is Mission Control Houston. The crew of Demo-2 just performing a few closeout duties. The hatches are open. They were open 12:02 p.m. Central Time. We're moments away from the board. Demo-2 to enter the International Space Station. It'll be the first time that Americans will enter the International Space Station on a rocket launched from U.S. soil, built by an American company. The first time ever Americans will enter from a commercially built spacecraft.
There's the view from the Dragon and from the station. Hello, are you there? Dash are starting to.
Let's try another time. The handshake is weak.
They're sliding down their chairs.
When you're able, we're just looking for a quick voice check on the mic.
Sound check.
Everybody goes through that. You know that, Sara.
Yeah. I know something about it.
By the way, your name is on the screen.
Wow. Incredible. So the whole crew dressed up.
Station Space Front 2, go ahead.
Chris, we were hoping we could voice check the mic just before starting the PAO event.
They're waiting to welcome their new 2 crew member on the international
members.
There are 2. To the International Space Station. They're beautiful. They're blue with the logo NASA. Like me, they decided to wear blue. We're matching.
Houston Dragon on the big loop in step 6.1 of 2.102. IMV duct installation is complete. Go for IMV fan activation.
Houston copies, go for IMV fan activation, that's in work.
Like waiting for the stars to come out from the theater. Everybody's there with their camera ready.
That's Sara Laratro's interpretation from her own personal experience of being in the entertainment industry. Starstruck by Cuba Jr. and
but they are stars. The 2 astronauts are the next stars. They're waiting for them.
If you're just tuning in,
here it is.
You're getting a live look.
Let's see.
They got a wireless microphone. It's a bit big. Wireless microphone. They could have had a lavalier microphone. I don't know why they use this. I guess maybe because they can hand it to other people.
Station Houston on two things. Chris, we did hear you over the PAO side of things. That was a good voice check. We might ask you for one more. And then for the Dragon crew, you also have a go for 6.3. That's opening the location 23 and checking for debris.
Dragon copies 6.3 in work.
Yeah, I think they're using this type of wireless microphone so that they can hand it to other people easily. But again,
if you're just tuning in, you're getting a live look. On the left of your screen is a look inside the Crew Dragon on the Demo-2 mission. On the right, the International Space Station.
Houston,
Bob Behnken.
Dragon on the big loop. We are ready for 6.4 and section 4 of the LIO instructions.
Just as a suggestion to the International Space Station.
And station,
command.
we copy. Dragon crew, you are go at 6.4.
And all the
Inward.
responsible people for the International Space Station, please send them nice lavalier microphones. Small ones that can be clipped on or moved around quite easily. There are small, tiny microphones that can be easily tuned, and they are unidirectional, so that you'll be able to not pick up any other noise. But these cumbersome equipment are quite surprising.
Probably that's what they had, and they didn't have any upgrade.
Well, they do have resupply missions. They have 12 resupply missions.
Yeah, but nobody thought
SpaceX.
about that.
So I'm reminding them.
Remember.
Audiovisual is very important, as you can see. It took them over an hour to set up, and they need to upgrade their audiovisual gear so that they can set it up quite quickly next time. I'm telling you, you can have a very cheap, very efficient, very small, very easy to set up multi-camera audiovisual system that can allow people from Houston, Texas, the mission control, or elsewhere like Hawthorne,
This is Mission Control
control
Houston.
such thing.
You're getting a live look at the inside of the International Space Station. The International Space Station. It will only be momentary. We'll have those views back to see Bob Behnken and Doug Hurley enter the International Space Station. When they do, it'll be the first time that humans will enter through this hatch for the first time in 9 years.
There is a tremendous amount of regulation.
So we had to get, I had to load the procedure from my iPad and hand it into them, so that's what took a little longer.
That's right. There's a procedure that needs to be followed and regulations that has to be followed. And things can sometimes be cumbersome. So I urge you guys to streamline your procedure. I know you give priority to obviously all the missions procedures over audiovisual procedures, but must be some streamlined integration somehow. And I'm happy to work with you to be able to streamline all this. I've been a consultant to a lot of the
Station
studios.
Houston 2 for Chris. When convenient, PO requests an additional voice check through the mic.
So they're testing the mic. You're going to interview them when they arrive. The ceremony, a welcome ceremony, is about to start.
And Chris, we're not hearing you in MCC. We are apparently getting it through to PAO. Just stand by.
So they're not able to route the sound to all the areas that they want the sound to be going to.
Chris. BAO is working comm reconfig. I'll call you if we're ready for another check.
Houston and SpaceX Endeavour in 6.5 Lyle cartridges sealed and installed.
SpaceX copies.
Station Houston on 2 for Chris. We wanted you to confirm that the mic is in channel 1. It needs to be in channel 1. A thought here is that it could have been bumped over to 2. And Chris, we see you trying. We're still not hearing you in MCC. We're working on it.
So I just understood something. I just understood something that really quickly. Let's just mention it. Is basic. There's a dinosaur right there at the bottom. Go ahead, Sarah. What were you gonna say?
There's a tiny dinosaurs on the bottom right of the screen, and the kids of the two astronauts decided, they voted for that was the toy to be brought in space. It's very cute.
Also, just to mention an important thing, the procedure for the audiovisual and the reason why the cameras weren't installed prior to the docking is for lots of safety regulations and safety reasons. Space programs tend to prioritize safety over anything else, because obviously you don't want to jeopardize the mission over stupid camera. So they minimize the exposure to unnecessary gear and equipment installed or rigged in favor for safety. So unfortunately, that cost a huge amount of time and technical issues. But there must be an integration. Again, I really, really do think that there must be a way to integrate and streamline health and safety with audiovisual rigging. And I think the key is in size and the size of the energy of the batteries in these cameras, that you could use cameras that can emit lesser wattage, and therefore they pose little to no threat in the perspective of health and safety.
Go ahead and cycle them to close if you're good with that call.
Yes, we are good with that call and appreciate the status. Thank you.
This is Mission Control Houston. If you're just tuning in, hatches were open at 12:02 p.m. Central Time. We are moments away from Bob Behnken and Doug Hurley entering the International Space Station. Again, this is Mission Control Houston, moments away from Bob and Doug entering the International Space Station. Shortly after they enter, we will conduct a welcome ceremony. There will be VIPs here in Mission Control Houston Ficker 1.
Looks like they're all closed visually now. We are in 8.3 for both SpaceX and Houston. Dragon arrival configuration is complete.
SpaceX copies. All valves appear closed visually now, and arrival configuration complete. Excellent to hear.
Houston copies. And with that, Endeavour, welcome to the International Space Station. Please come aboard.
They're coming on board.
Endeavour copies with pleasure. We'll be there in a second.
You can do it, guys. You can do it.
We have Bob Behnken from SpaceX Demo-2 mission entering the International Space Station. Followed by Doug Hurley.
We lost sound from their end.
They made it! Wow! And finally, after 3 hours.
We have no audio from them.
We have no audio from them. Wow. Oh, they're taking a picture.
They lost audio as soon as they walked in.
Wow.
I think their mic is easily
prone
to switching channels inadvertently.
And Station Houston, we see you, and it's a great-looking photograph. So thanks for that. Stand by one. We'll call you when we're ready for the event in the next few seconds.
Historical moment.
Got a whole bunch of very
and they're standing, but there's no gravity.
MCC right now.
He would never.
Demo-2 crew now aboard the International Space Station. They entered at 12:22 p.m. Central Time. The station at the time was 262 statute miles over Turkmenistan. Crew all gathered in front of the cameras at the Node 2 forward end of the International Space Station. Just behind them is the hatchway to the Crew Dragon on this Demo-2 mission. We're standing by for a welcome ceremony. We'll have VIPs here in Mission Control Houston ready to greet the crew.
And Station, we're just about ready. Stand by. All right, Station, it's Houston on Space Ground 2. Confirm that you are ready for the event.
Houston, this station, we are ready for the event.
Copy that. And sir, Administrator Bridenstine, welcome to MCC. Please call station for a voice check.
Station, this is the NASA Administrator. Can you hear me?
We hear you loud and clear, sir. Welcome to the space station.
Thank you, Chris. It's good to see you. And welcome to Bob and Doug. I will tell you, the whole world saw this mission, and we are so, so proud of everything you have done for our country, and in fact, to inspire the world.
We sure appreciate that, sir. It's obviously been our honor to be just a small part of this. We have to give credit to SpaceX, the Commercial Crew Program, and of course, NASA. It's great to get the United States back in the crewed launch business, and we're just really glad to be on board this magnificent complex.
Well, we have some VIPs with us here, and I'm sure they have some questions that they'd like to ask you, but I have one of my own before I turn it over. And I just wanted to find out if you guys got any sleep on your way up there the last, I'd say, I get 19 hours. Did you guys get any sleep?
Yeah, I think a lot of folks in Hawthorne were asking the same question, sir, but we did get probably a good 7 hours or so opportunity for sleep, and I did succeed at sleep, and Doug did as well. So the first night is always a little bit of a challenge, but the Dragon was a slick vehicle, and we had good airflow, and so we had a excellent evening, and just excited to be back in low Earth orbit again.
Amazing. Well, one of the people that is here with us today is Senator Ted Cruz, and of course he's a huge advocate of America's space program, and he's been somebody who has helped us so much as we transition from one administration to the next administration. And the reason missions like this can have success is because of continuity of purpose. And Senator Ted Cruz was a leader on a bill called the NASA Transition Authorization Act. And because of that, we have had a lot of political support, and we're very grateful for his leadership. Senator Cruz, would you like to say a few words?
Well, congratulations, gentlemen. The eyes of the world are upon you, and everyone is proud of you. All of America is watching you. And today and yesterday represent big, big days. We're looking at a decade since we've had American astronauts launched on an American ship from American soil. And I can tell you, I sat with my wife and kids in our living room watching on TV yesterday, and I suspect we did what just about everyone watching did, including both of you. We just held our breath as it took off. And we're glad to see you've landed safely. We're glad to see you've docked. And so let me ask you, that Dragon is an amazing vehicle. How does she handle?
It flew just like it was supposed to. It was we had a couple opportunities to take it out for a spin, so to speak, once after we got into orbit last night, and again today about 20 minutes before we docked. And my compliments to the folks back at Hawthorne and SpaceX for how well it flew. It is exactly like the simulator, and we couldn't be happier about the performance of the vehicle.
What do you guys hope to accomplish in your time on the International Space Station?
Well, while we're on board the space station, of course, with the new spacecraft, we do hope to put her through her paces. And so the good ship Endeavour is going to get a lot of checkout over the next week or two here. And hopefully we'll be able to declare her operational. And Doug and I will be able to take some burden off of Chris and his crewmates, Ivan and Anatoly, so that we can keep the space station operating at its peak possibilities. So we're looking forward to contributing any way that we can. And like I said, trying to
keep space station as productive as possible.
As a country, we're in the midst of a tough week. We're seeing protests, we're seeing a lot of anger, we're seeing violence. And I have to say this launch and y'all's docking is a powerful inspiration of what we can do when we come together, of the power of unity, the power of ingenuity. And so I guess the last question I would ask you is since you have the opportunity to address, in particular, all the young people in America, what would you tell them in terms of what we can do when we can come together?
You know, that's a great question. 9 years ago, just about exactly 9 years ago, we docked with Atlantis on STS-135, the last flight of the Space Shuttle program, a 30-year program. And folks at SpaceX, folks at NASA, the Commercial Crew Program put their heads together and worked diligently year after year, making sacrifices, working hard. And then 9 years later, American launch capability was restored. And this is just one effort that we can show for the ages in this dark time that we've had over the past several months to kind of inspire, especially the young people in the United States, to reach for these lofty goals and work hard and look what you can accomplish.
Thank you, gentlemen. God bless you.
Thank you, Senator Cruz. We have another very special guest here that represents the Johnson Space Center. And of course, it's my good friend from the House of Representatives, Dr. Brian Babin. And I want to be clear, he also was a big part of the NASA Transition Authorization Act, which gave us the continuity of purpose to make this happen today. So, gentlemen, here is Dr. Brian Babin from the state of Texas.
Thank you. It's great to be with you guys. I was at the launch yesterday. I just want to say a huge congratulations. And, you know, there was a thunderstorm that blew in about 30 minutes or 45 minutes or so before liftoff. And it was in doubt there for a minute, but it was just an enormous achievement. I just want to say thank you for you guys. Really appreciate what you're doing for America, and the crew that's already been up there, Chris, and your two fellow Russians. To give you a great big thank you as well. I have a son who was a Navy SEAL, and I want to thank you for your service there too, Chris. And also, I would like to just see what I know you said that the craft, the Dragon, handled very well, but I want to see how it compares with the space shuttle. If one of you would address that, I would appreciate it.
Well, thank you, sir. It certainly has been a long endeavor for us and our namesake spacecraft. We're proud to have her on board the International Space Station after all that the teams around the country and across America have done to get us here today. As far as a comparison with the space shuttle, both Doug and I took a few minutes while we were accomplishing the approach and docking to, in our spare time, talk a little bit about it. We were surprised a little bit at how smooth things were off the pad. The space shuttle is a pretty rough ride heading into orbit with the solid rocket boosters. And our expectation was, as we continued with the flight into second stage, that things would basically get a lot smoother than the space shuttle did. But Dragon was huffing and puffing all the way into orbit, and we were definitely driving or riding a Dragon all the way up. And so it was not quite the same ride, the smooth ride, as the space shuttle was up to MECO. A little bit less G's, but a little bit more alive is probably the best way I would describe it. Anything else, Doug?
No, sounds good.
Bob, what is MECO?
Sorry, I have to apologize for actually using the term MECO. It's a little bit confusing between the space shuttle
and the Dragon vehicle. So it's a main engine cutoff is what MECO stands for. Those happened at different times in flight for the two vehicles. For the space shuttle, that was when you were all the way in orbit. For Dragon, that was just a little bit after 2 minutes. And then we had the single engine cutoff for second stage when we achieved orbit. So that time under the single engine under Dragon with one engine was more of an experience than the shuttle was for that 6.5 minutes or so that we were under that second stage motor.
Well, I would just like to say, in fact, Doug, did you have something you wanted to add there? I met your mother and father yesterday, Doug, and great folks. They're very, very proud of their son.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. Hopefully they enjoyed the launch. I know for parents, it can probably be pretty nerve-wracking for them to experience a launch. This was their third, so I'm glad everything went okay, and hopefully it was a good show. We haven't obviously heard or seen any video yet, but we're looking forward to seeing the launch replayed sometime.
I can assure you that it was a great show. It was one of the treats of my lifetime, I would have to say, and many other folks that were sitting there looking all across the country and even the world. And I can tell you, as Senator Cruz said, we've gone through some really, really rough times over the last few days, and to have that successful launch, the public-private partnership between NASA and SpaceX, and you guys being so well trained and having it go off without a hitch was a tremendous blessing for our country. And I can't tell you how many emails and communications I've gotten from people that who were so disturbed by what's been going on, transpiring around the country, to have the great news and the wonderful liftoff and everything going without a hitch. So I just want to say God bless both of you. Thank you so very much. Bless the rest of you folks up there as well. We thank our Russian partners. And thank you, Chris. Y'all are all in our prayers, and we're looking forward to seeing you successfully complete your mission and back safely on Earth. God bless.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, and just so you guys are aware, the show was in fact spectacular. The ratings on NASA TV beat everyone else. Not just some of them, it beat all of them, and that includes, yeah, just so everybody is aware, the whole world saw this. It trended #1 on Twitter. It was the #1 thing talked about on social media in general. This was an amazing moment, and it represents a transition in how we do space flight from the United States of America. NASA is not going to purchase, own, and operate rockets and capsules the way we used to. We're going to partner with commercial industry for access to low Earth orbit, and those partnerships are going to enable our providers to get customers that are not NASA and drive down our costs. And we're going to have numerous providers that are competing on cost and innovation and safety. And we're going to have more access to low Earth orbit than ever before. And this business model, now that it's been proven on commercial resupply of the International Space Station, now commercial crew to the International Space Station, this model is going to apply, and I know Senator Cruz has this near and dear to him, when we go to the moon. And of course, when we go to the moon, it's going to be done because of the great people here at the Johnson Space Center and so many other centers across the United States of America. But when we go to the moon, we're going to land on the surface of the moon with commercial landers. And of course, we're very proud of the Commercial Lunar Payload Services Program being managed right here out of the Johnson Space Center as well, so that we can take small payloads to the surface of the moon. And all of this is leading up to an amazing day where we have humans living and working for long periods of time on the surface of the moon, but doing it with a purpose. And that purpose, of course, is to go to Mars. humanity is going to explore more and be able to go further than ever before because of the public-private partnerships. We all know that if the government is creating the demand and the government is creating the supply, we will always be limited. But when we have partners that are interested in exploring commercially and doing the things that are necessary, to get capital investment, then we're all going to end up better. So I want to just say the whole world saw this. This is a new era in human space flight, and we are so grateful for the service of not just our 2 astronauts that embarked on this mission, but the 100,000 plus people that participate in it, in this mission, everything from the suppliers to the main contractors, to the NASA team, the SpaceX team. What an amazing day for our country and, in fact, for the world. I'm going to turn it over for a second to my deputy, Jim Morehard, who's been a great deputy at NASA.
Gentlemen, congratulations. You know, Jim's mentioned going to the moon. And yesterday and today, one, you've inspired the Artemis generation, which is our next generation. And that's what this is about. It's really bringing the children that we've got and our grandchildren forward so they'll be the ones that are going into deep space. This is the dawn of a new era. And we just thank you for being at the beginning of it. Thank you so much.
It was absolutely our pleasure, but it's just the huge team effort across the board from SpaceX to NASA that made this all happen. We were just the lucky guys that got to fly the rocket yesterday.
I have a question for Chris Cassidy. Our crew here decided to be about 3 days late. You got to work them overtime, I presume, now to get them caught up on all the activities that they missed out on. Any plans for them?
Well, the day they missed out on was a good one for them to skip. It was Saturday house cleaning, but I took care of it for them. We'll catch up next weekend. But in all seriousness, we've got a few things to take care of tonight. Make sure we're all safe and we know the plan in case something bad happens. And then we're looking forward to some operational stuff later in the month. Maybe we'll get outside and do some spacewalks. And our efforts in these coming weeks will be in that effort. So we're all super excited to have 2 more crewmates to the Expedition 63 team.
Awesome. And of course, here in Houston, this is the home of the astronaut office, and the Johnson Space Center is led by Mark Geyer, and I'm going to turn it over to Mark for a few comments.
Thank you, Jim. Hey, it's great to see all of you there. Good to see you, Bob and Doug. I know we talked a few days ago. You look a little taller than I remember you. And but I also want to thank Anatoly and Iman and of course Chris for what you guys have been doing since you all arrived. And I know there's been a ton to do, and you've been really busy, and I appreciate that. So I also like this visual of our international partnership. We have had a tremendous partnership with Roscosmos, and we will continue to do so. But it is nice to see crew arrive from this side of the space station. So that was pretty cool after 9 years. I did have one question for Chris, though. What might you do to ensure that Bob and Doug stay longer? Do you have any strategy there?
Well, we'll slow down the rate of which I'm eating food, and maybe we can stretch out our consumables a little bit. But that's a great question. We'll have to come up with some conniving scheme here in the next few days.
All right. Thank you. Thanks, guys. Look forward to greeting the 3 of you eventually back in Ellington after your work is complete. Thank you.
And of course, Mark Geyer has an amazing deputy, Vanessa Weiss, if you'd like to come and say a few words.
Thank you, Jim. Hi, guys. You look really good. I just want to say on behalf of everybody here, we just want to thank you. It was an amazing launch, and we love seeing the docking. You guys all look really good. Just thank you for all that you're doing, and we can't wait for you to return, but not too soon. station wants you to get a lot of work done. So looking forward to all of that. But thank you. And God bless.
Thank you, Vanessa. We appreciate that.
All right, we also have with us Steve Jerzik, who is the Associate Administrator for the agency. For people who don't know what that is, that, of course, is the Chief Operating Officer of the agency. But he also ran the flight readiness review for this mission. He did really an amazing job, and I can't say enough about his leadership at the agency. Steve, if you'd like to say a few words, ask a few questions.
Hey guys, it is just great to see you all on the station. I can't tell you how my adrenaline shut down when you guys opened the hatch. I mean, I've just been on edge ever since yesterday, and the weather cleared. I can't tell you how great it's been to see you on station. It has been a team effort. I felt like the last 2 years I've kind of been part of the team, working through issues, and it's been a heck of a year and a half with Demo-2 and the in-flight abort test, and working through issues like parachutes and the escape system. And I just could not be more proud of the team for getting to this point. It's amazing, and you obviously have been part of that. I really appreciate you all showing up in Washington D.C. at our reviews, and because the last thing we do at those reviews is look at you all, because you guys are the risk takers, and make sure you're okay with where we are and where we're headed. So I really, really appreciate that. I really appreciate your active participation in that. And I could not be more, like I said, more proud of the team, and congratulations. And it is awesome to see you guys on station.
Well, thank you, sir. We're just proud to be a part of the team that got to bring space flight back to the Florida coast. I appreciated the comment earlier that it was nice to see a vehicle come to the forward portion of the space station, but I'll tell you what, that's the only way Doug and I know how to do it. So thanks to the team for providing it to happen our way. We appreciate that.
Well, Bob and Doug, just so you're aware, I'm being given the wrap signal. Doug, did you have something to say before we wrap it up here?
Oh, no, sir. We're just happy to be here, and Chris is going to put us to work, and hopefully we will fit in and not mess too many things up.
I have no doubt that you guys are going to do amazing work. I just want you to know the president came to the launch and the vice president came to the launch. About half the cabinet was at the launch. We had members of Congress and members of the Senate from both sides of the aisle. And this was an amazing moment of unity for the nation. It was an amazing moment for the whole world to look up. In the midst of the coronavirus pandemic and some other challenges, we were able to have this very, very special moment where we could all look at the future and say that things are going to be brighter tomorrow than they are today. And you and the NASA team and the SpaceX team gave us that opportunity. And for that, we are so, so grateful. I would also be remiss as the NASA administrator if I didn't promote what comes next. And of course, this is the beginning. We are now launching to low Earth orbit again, but we will soon be going to the moon. We will be going to the moon sustainably with commercial partners and international partners. We're going to use the resources of the moon to learn how to live and work for long periods of time. Ultimately, we're going to take all of that knowledge and we're going to go to Mars. And of course, this time when we go to the moon, we go with a very diverse, highly qualified astronaut corps that includes women, which is why we call the program Artemis, named after the twin sister of Apollo, and she, in Greek mythology, was the goddess of the moon. This is the beginning. There is so much more to come, and I'm glad that our representatives of the Johnson Space Center are here because we're going to be asking them to fund this project. And what an amazing day that you guys have given us. So thank you from not just me and the people here, but from the United States of America and people all around the world. I'm more popular on Twitter than I've ever been, and it's because of you guys. Thank you.
To the crew on the International Space Station.
Thank you very much.
Hey, Chris, we ask that you just hold your position for a few minutes. There's, of course, a number of photos we'd like to take. And then a quick note for those down here in the room. To Senator Cruz, Congressman Bobbin, Administrator Bridenstine, Director Geyer, and all of our distinguished visitors, thank you for your participation in today's historic event, and thank you for the leadership that has enabled it.
Station, this is Houston ACR. Thank you. That concludes our event as we count down to 20 continuous years of humans living and working on the International Space Station.
And Doug, arrival at the International Space Station. You can see here, amazing. This is the corridor where they've been preparing and setting up for 2 hours for the arrival to take these fantastic pictures for this historical moment. They've been interviewed from the government and all the senators, and they're there now for the ritual pictures. That's the entrance to the International Space Station from the Dragon that docked this morning very early here in LA. This is the crew. On the right, you can see Bob and thank you so much, guys.
That concludes our coverage of the SpaceX Demo-2 mission in conjunction with NASA. On behalf of all the teams that participated in this mission, from Hawthorne to Houston to Mission Control to the Kennedy Space Center, this is Mission Control Houston.
We hope you guys enjoyed. This is the end of our viewing. Thank you so much for watching this fantastic trip from Earth to space at the International Space Station. Thank you so much. Bye.